TGIF, it's a Friday, March 7th, 2025. March 7th is also an important day for a special Matt Ludahl of Bismarck, North Dakota. Happy birthday, Matt. Now, Matt is a window washer in Bismarck, North Dakota. If you are a window washer in Bismarck, North Dakota, you're a tough breed, especially this winter. Now, as we go and take a look at what's coming our way this weekend into early next week, the current stormy weather pattern is going to be moving out. High pressure is going to be moving in. Nice scene there out of North Park, Colorado, as snow fell in many areas, more spots than others. The snow that was the heaviest fell about where we expected it to be, the lighter where we expected the lighter snows to be. The system will still produce a little bit of winter weather in the early part of the day today, but basically by afternoon and tonight, skies will be clearing out. We'll have a cold night. We'll have some areas of fog. But in classic March situations, you tend to get these storms. Then you have a nice warm up and you melt a lot of the snow and it gets to feel like spring. And then you await the next storm system. As we look ahead in the next week, two things are becoming clear. Two storm systems will move through the western United States next week. However, the first one isn't going to be much of a weather maker. There's going to be a system coming off the California coast Tuesday into Wednesday. It's just not going to do much. It'll kick the wind up. It is going to produce a little bit of shower activity for some areas, but it's mainly going to come through with not much fanfare. The second storm system, though, we've been hinting at the 14th and 15th of March is something to keep an eye on, and we're going to stick to that based on what we're seeing, the way the pattern is evolving. So we are going to be watching out for a storm about a week from today that is likely going to have bigger impacts in the central and western United States. And this is a storm that could become a large, intense storm for the northern plains, but part of the Rockies as well. So it's something that we're going to monitor between now and as we get into next week. Watch out for that 14th and 15th time frame as we take a look as that pattern evolves. But we have this weekend, and we have a fair amount of next week where the weather's actually not going to do a lot. Fog got very thick and dense in the upslope in some areas. The shot from Jan Curtis in Cheyenne last night, the fog dense enough to block out the city lights, and you'll get that in these upslope events. You get the snow that will develop, but also low clouds and fog in the upslope areas, limiting visibility quite a bit. And the wind that's been raking through Nebraska with these storms, dumping ice on the shores of Lake McConaughey. Take a look at that. A lot of road closures across Wyoming this morning. Hard to get to point A to point B in many areas. You can see the red lines. You can see the exclamation points. Check conditions before traveling, not only in Wyoming, but surrounding states as well. The winter storm watches and advisories and warnings continue, although most of this is going to be for the morning hours up here as the snow is winding down, but warnings are still in effect through the morning hours. But you can see as the second piece of the low comes through, we have winter storm watches and warnings and advisories for winter weather across Arizona, New Mexico, into the panhandle of Texas and Oklahoma here, as the southern branch of the low goes across those areas there. The satellite imagery shows that low right there along the California-Arizona border, and the other low right here over north central Kansas, bringing that upslope into the area here. So that's scooting off this way. This guy is going to kind of curl around and go like this. So for you folks in the southern Rockies and southern plains, there's the low right there. You're going to get a little bit of weather this weekend as it swings through. By noon Sunday, though, it's already out into the southern plains. And this is the nice area of high pressure that develops over the weekend. So, hey, this is a great weekend to hit the ski slopes, hit the snowmobile trails, hit the cross-country trails, play in that new fresh snow that has come on in here with this most recent storm. This little low right here is pinching off from the main flow. That's why it's not going to be much of a weather maker. But through the weekend, this is the path of that low in the south. Nice moisture, badly needed moisture for parts of Arizona and New Mexico here, going across the southern plains. This is the moisture that will fall in the early part of the day today as the storm winds down in the northern areas. When we take a look at snowfall, looks like that. So the mountains, the southern Rockies, But even into the panhandles here, you've got a little bit of the white stuff coming. As we get into next week, the wave that comes through Tuesday and Wednesday is pretty weak. It takes a similar path across Arizona and New Mexico, but it's going to be somewhat moisture-starved. The weather maker that's going to come in late next week is right here. Off the coast of Seattle, we highlighted that this has a very strong jet stream on the back side of it. And with that much intensity of the jet stream winds, it is going to translate and want to dig into the west central United States, coming off the west coast very quickly as we get to the end of next week. The question with these is always, what are they going to do when they get on the other side of the divide? Where will the surface low form? And will it be a slow-moving storm, a quick-moving storm, or somewhere in between? Because all of those things are important as they come together. But this is going to be another classic setup, kind of like what we had early in the week with the strong storm that went out into the plains. This storm is going to be similar, but it's going to likely be larger and tracking just a little bit more to the south. But there's a lot that could happen between now and next Friday. But just want to let you know how things evolve. There's a lot of jet stream energy here, a lot of cold, moist Pacific air coming in off the waters here. This is a classic early spring setup for the storm system. So we go through the weekend and we go through most of next week with not a lot going on. Along the Pacific Northwest in California, though, by Wednesday into Thursday, it's going to be raining and snowing along the west coast as that storm digs in. There we go by Friday. By Friday, the low digs in and wants to be near the Four Corners area. But there's a lot of strong jet stream wind activity coming in behind this low as well. So what this tends to do is it tends to kick out the storms quickly. So they end up becoming a quick mover. However, one bias the models have is moving things too quickly, especially when you go out 5, 6, 7, 8 days from now. So while this would be a pretty impressive storm system on its own, one thing that we have talked about is the artificial intelligence version of the weather models that is becoming more and more common now, where they look at historical patterns, not just projections, but they kind of merge the projections with, well, what's happened in the past. And that's something that is really clever and I think is going to be a real help with artificial intelligence and weather forecasting. It's not going to solve all the weather forecasting problems, but it's going to help. So what the AI says is something just a little bit different, but this is important. What it shows is the AI version, if we were to take off the lows and highs here, this is the European model, just straight calculations, not based on any historical precedent, but what the projections of how the atmosphere will behave over the next 7 days or so. If we compare that to where we add a little bit of historical context, what's happened in the past, we have a much more intense storm over southwest Kansas. So there's a lot of difference here. And notice there's a little separation between the strong jet stream winds up here and a little bit of we'll just call that a little ridge, a little bit of ridge between waves. This happens more often than when we don't have much of the little ridge here. We'll just see what happens. If the AI version comes to fruition, this will be an intense spring storm for the plains and possibly front range areas. And also, this would be a storm that curves right up into the Dakotas. So this could end up being very impactful for the front range of the Rockies and parts of the Dakotas, a high wind event for New Mexico and West Texas. Severe weather breaks out across the nation's midsection. So this storm system late next week could be a significant weather maker. The good news is we've got a week to figure it out. Have yourself a great weekend. See you Monday.